What's up, guys, and welcome back to another edition of Pistons Thoughts. It has been a little bit of time. We have a lot to discuss, and I'm here with our partner, Chris McClellan. What's up, Chris?
What's up, guys? How you doing, man? I'm hyped, man. Like, it's been like almost 2 years.
It's been about 2 years.
Shit,
I'm
man.
hyped, but I'm also really annoyed with how the Pistons have been playing lately.
Dude, they're fucking aggravating, but we'll get there. We'll get there.
So here's where we're at. The
Okay.
Pistons are 17-21, ninth place in the East. That's not very acceptable about 40 games into the season.
Dude, how the hell are we behind the Nets?
And the Hornets.
And the Hornets, dude.
And the Heat.
That's just that's pitiful.
That's
to
terrible.
say the least.
I mean, granted, the Nets have been surprisingly really solid this year. The Hornets are about where they are all year. The Heat have been a bit disappointing for Heat fans. But the Pistons should have a better record than those teams. I mean, at the very minimum. Like, a lot of us thought they'd be fighting for 4 or 5 seed in the East. Apparently, we're about to be fighting for 8 again.
That's kind of... And it's hard to say, too, because I'm trying to give the benefit of doubt. I'm trying to, give a little leeway. Because, we are in this, transitional phase. We just got a new coach. We have this roster is kind of weird, But at the same time, even with the whole Blake Griffin trade last year or last season, we're like, oh shit, dude, we're gonna try and push for that playoffs and whatever. That shit was a wash. But coming into this year, you're expecting a lot more. Especially from now I get it. I know that Dre and Blake are putting up the fucking numbers, and the rest of the team is lackluster, to kind of say the least.
Hell no. Yeah.
But I also expected a lot more coming into this season. At least, if not 7, at least 8, dude. At least I don't know. It's aggravating.
Yeah. So I mean, here's the thing. So Blake Griffin, his first healthy offseason in a long time.
Right.
And he has come back, and Blake Griffin has been absolutely incredible this season. If the Pistons were any better, I think for sure he'd be in the MVP conversation. But here's the issue we're running into now. He's not going to be able to sustain this for 5 more years, for 6, 7, 8 more years, right?
Right.
We have a few years of Blake Griffin's window to maximize here.
True.
And granted, I know it's not the current front office's fault. They inherited a terribly put together team. Stan really did a terrible job.
Dude, Stan really, excuse my language, he fucked us a lot. I mean, just the dumbest shit. And that's why I'm trying to be a little lenient, because it's hard for Dwayne Casey to kind of come into this team that's almost just haphazardly thrown together and trying to make things work out of that, and it's tough. I can totally understand that.
Right.
But at the same time, it's just I feel like it's also equal responsibility for the team too. In general, hey guys, last season was a huge disappointment.
Right.
Let's kind of come in here. Let's work. Kind of like the Dre thing. Dre, I believe was it last season or 2 years ago? Whatever, I can't remember. But he was just playing ass, dude. Just straight up, just not good. And I know he had the excuse of, whatever that thing with his nose.
Breathing.
The breathing thing.
2 years ago? I don't know.
I think it was 2 years ago. And I mean, and I get it. He kind of came back and took responsibility for that. But still, I feel like it's a whole team effort too. We have a dedication to the fans, to the city. Let's even Dwayne Casey as a new coach. Let's try to show him we do want to work hard, and we want to win. We want to make playoffs. We want to do what we go back to our former glories and stuff like that. So I don't know. It's tough, dude. It's a gray area.
Yeah, I mean, so Blake's been playing phenomenally. Dre started the season, the first 20 games, absolute monster. Right. I mean, looking like he realistically could be in the MVP conversation as well if the Pistons kept up their good play. But so he's been putting up numbers, but it seems to be the least impactful 19 points and 15 rebounds a game that you could imagine. Granted,
it's tough,
he's
dude.
super talented, so he could sleepwalk and get those numbers.
Right.
But he's not having the impact on the game that he was the first 20 games of the year. Granted, Casey's offense has its issues and has something to do with it, but something's got to change. I mean, I've been preaching this for a month, right? I think they've won 3 games since they beat the Warriors about a month and a half ago.
That's pitiful, dude. And going back on that, that's why it's so aggravating. It's so there'll be a stretch of a few games they lose, right?
Right.
And then we'll talk. It's kind of like any Detroit sport if you think about it. Like
Yep.
they'll lose a few games, you get pissed off about it, you talk about it, you hold them accountable, and then like they'll win one just out of nowhere, like randomly and miraculously. And then they're like, okay, cool, this is a turnaround. We're shaping up. Maybe
Yep.
Let's kind of be positive. And then they'll lose the next 4 games, and that's what's kind of like, all right, that's a pattern that can't really happen often. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Like, I don't know if it's just luck of the draw or if it's just like we just need to change the way we play, change the way we think, or even approach the game, or just something.
Well, it's interesting because they were playing really well consistently up through the Warriors game. And I remember that was the game because it capped off like a really good start to the season.
Right.
And me and everyone else was like, all right, guys, like it's time to buy in. I know last year we started great.
Dude,
I
was going to bring that up. I was like, dude, we did that shit last year, dude.
Everybody was like, when I said it this year, they're like, okay, you said the same thing last year. I'm like, I know, but this is different.
This is the year.
Right? We got Blake Griffin and we got Dwayne Casey.
He's putting up numbers.
Granted, we're only 38 games into the season. There's still time for me to be right, but God, I look like an idiot again. They keep making me look like an idiot.
Dude, something needs to change. I have faith that it will. I mean, Dwayne Casey seems like a really smart guy. Even the way he like will talk about each loss as a huge, like, almost like it's a personal thing with him too. Like, and I appreciate that. I mean, you never really saw that with Stan much. Rarely.
Yeah, the difference is Dwayne is sort of he'll mention what he did wrong. He'll take responsibility because he hasn't been as good as he has been advertised yet.
Right.
I mean, we can admit that, but I do have faith in him long term to right the ship.
Right. Yeah.
But it's after game, he's just preaching patience. He's just like, we're gonna get it. Like, I'm not worried. Like, granted, we're in a tailspin right now, but I do trust that he'll figure it out.
It's a learning curve, dude. I mean, it's like anything. You kind of come into it new, or it's gonna be a little few bumps in the road, but sooner or later you figure it out. And I mean, I don't know. I'm still trying to have faith, but again, it's kind of hard as even just a Detroit fan in general, dude. Yeah. But hey, we'll see.
Yeah. It's pretty much so, but so there's only so much he can do with this roster that he got inherited from Stan.
True.
So let me just go back to Stan for a second because we haven't talked about him since he left. We've been gone for so long.
It's almost like one of those, like, you ever have, and whoever's listening, they can agree or disagree. But you ever, like, you're in a group with people and you're all having a good time and everyone's like positive and shit. And then like there's that one person or that one friend that kind of comes through and like just changes the whole mood. Right. And then when they leave, it's like uplifting. Everyone's talking shit.
Addition by subtraction.
I feel like this is what that is. Like ever since Stan left, people have been, I mean, granted, we just talked about the situation with Detroit, but it's been a lot more positive. A lot of people are willing to kind of still kind of be positive about maybe the outcome. Maybe it's just that learning curve thing, but I feel like when Stan was here, or I guess in Detroit, it's just one of those like dark stains almost. Like you just feel so negative.
Right.
You know what I mean?
It's interesting because Stan came here, and overall he did a good job of sort of reestablishing the culture and getting the shit back on track because there was 6-7 years of just like absolute dreadfulness from the Pistons. Yeah. I still somehow watched almost every game during that time.
Dude, Charlie Villanueva. That's all I can think about because like that's just like a weird time.
I mean, it started with AI coming in for Chauncey.
Oh, dude, I remember that too.
One of the worst days.
That was so weird.
But so Stan, you got to give him credit because he did establish that culture back. He got us back to the playoffs. Granted, we didn't win a game. It was a good series, but then from that point on, it was all downhill. So the first 2 years of Stan, I was really happy with it. Everyone was happy. Granted, he was still tough on players, but it was okay because they were playing hard. They were seeing the results. It was working. When you start to lose and you have that coach who's still that tough on you, but you're not seeing results,
it's not motivating.
That's when you run into the issues.
Right.
That's where we're at. So Stan did a great job in the trade market. I'm not mad at the Blake Griffin trade at all.
I think it's panning out better than we thought.
Right.
I mean,
I like him more than I did.
Right. I mean, he's the only player that's putting up numbers consistently a night and getting us close to wins. I mean, I'm cool with it.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, sometimes but I can't even fault Blake. I mean, I think it's just the team in general.
Right.
Like,
so with that, the trades were great, but the free agency signings are what got us to where we're at. I mean, you have $10 million going to John Lure right now, who I don't know. He's maybe putting up 10 minutes a game.
That's just
and
ridiculous,
that just started recently.
Dude.
You got $7 million going to Langston Galloway, who I like for $3 million, maybe $2 million, not $7 million, and you just have us tied up. Granted, I don't fault him for the Andre contract because a lot of people give him shit for that, but you're not going to let your 23-year-old potentially superstar, all-star at minimum center, best rebounder in the league, best since fucking Moses Malone or Dennis Rodman.
Right.
You don't let him walk when you have him there and he's your franchise player. Granted, I don't think that Dre is a franchise player. I think he's the second or probably third best player. No, he's third best player. He's second right now, but he's third best player on a good team. But we have no cap flexibility. There's limited things we can do. No teams want our trash that we want to get rid of.
Which sucks, dude. That's why it's such a weird situation. It's like the only people anyone would probably even want are Blake and Dre. Like, let's just be honest.
I don't know if anyone wants Blake, to be honest, because a lot of people probably don't want his contract.
Oh, true.
I mean, no one's going to give us more than we gave the Clippers for him, which was an expiring Avery Bradley, Tobias Harris, who I fucking want to come back to Detroit.
Dude, that'd be free agent this year. Clutch, man. I think that'd be so fucking awesome.
If we, I know we couldn't, and it wouldn't make any sense, but if we could have kept Tobias and gotten Blake,
we would, dude. We would
because offense is a huge issue, and that's a problem we have right now. Our roster is full of players who call themselves shooters or who coaches call shooters, but who can't shoot.
Can't put up fucking
numbers. We have Reggie Bullock, who is our best shooter. We have Luke Kennard, who's scared to shoot, but is an incredible shooter.
Right.
That's it. Langston Galloway, incredibly inconsistent shooter. Reggie Jackson has been a better shooter. We'll get to him in a minute.
Dude, I can't with Reggie Jackson.
Stanley can't shoot anything. Bruce Brown, who I absolutely love and we'll also talk about later, has actually been a decent shooter, better than Stanley, which is hilarious to me. But we have no shooting. That's an issue. That is a huge issue on this team.
Mm-hmm.
And it's tough to run an offense where Blake Griffin's getting doubled and tripled in the post, and he has to kick it out to anyone who can't shoot. That's the problem. And especially when you have Dre and Blake in there at the same time, there's limited space off the bat. You need shooters. That's why I was pissed when we didn't scoop Kyle Korver up from the Cavs, because he's just a veteran presence, first of all, which is great. And he's like, you have to respect his shot. He's like, 38, 39?
Right.
However old he is, it doesn't matter. He can still shoot the ball, and he can still score 8 to 12 points a game off the bench just off of shooting, which would be great. Or even in the starting lineup with Blake and Dre. So that's an issue. Point guard play, also a big issue. You got to give Reggie a little credit because he's been asked to adjust so hard from having the ball in his hands all the time, pick and roll with Dre, to sort of letting Blake run the show. And, obviously that's going to be a struggle. But there's been a lot of times this season, mainly earlier in the year, because he hasn't been playing late lately, but where he would try to do his Reggie takeover fourth quarter.
Dude, that shit pissed me off.
Some games.
Dude, that shit used to piss me off 2 years ago.
Right.
3
years ago. He was great.
Oh, it was. Yeah.
Well, 3 years ago is when he was actually killing it. He was leading the league in fourth quarter points. Mm-hmm. And then he got hurt and then thought he was the same player. But it wasn't. Which that's the thing is I'm not telling Reggie how to play the game. He's a professional basketball player. I'm not. But you got to sort of know your limitations at this point and understand your role. Dwayne Casey came in, gave everybody a role card. You got to know your role, slide in, play it the best you can. I think Dwayne said his message was be the MVP in your role. And I think that's a fucking awesome message. It's so simple.
Well, yeah,
it makes sense.
Yeah, I definitely like that too.
But so Reggie's been fine, but he's not the point guard that this team needs, and he's costing a lot of money. And it's at the point where Dwayne, which I disagree with, where Dwayne doesn't trust him enough, and Jose Calderon is playing equal minutes to him or more, which is terrible.
It's weird.
Give me back Steve Blake or Beno Udrih.
Dude, Steve Blake. But oh my God. That's a throwback.
I've been a big Jose fan.
Dude, he was
his
funny,
career.
dude.
Steve Blake?
Yeah.
Fucking turnover machine.
Dude, him and Baines, dude. Butterfinger Baines, I used to call him.
Yeah, I mean, Baines, of course, he goes to Boston.
And like, balls out. Yeah, what the fuck
whatever.
is that?
No, I knew we would miss Baines when he left. But
yeah.
Zaza has been fine this year as the backup. He's been injured lately. But, I mean, he sets really good screens. He is not an incredible rebounder, which is an issue. That's the thing is once Dre leaves the game, Pistons can't get a rebound. But when Dre's in the game, he's not playing as well as he should defensively. Whatever. This roster is flawed.
It's just too many cracks in there, man. Like, there's too many cracks where literally the smallest thing can just tear us apart, you know?
A little glimmer of hope is Ish Smith is coming back from injury possibly this week during this 4-game road trip. They're going to be in L.A. We're in L.A. We should go to a game.
Hey.
Who wants to hook up some Pistons press passes for
exactly.
that
Hey, if anyone can do it, we'll Twitch it, you know. Right, exactly.
Stream the entire thing.
We'll Periscope it. We'll do everything.
But
watch, we actually get like sponsors to do that.
I know every single one of like the 70 listeners here is just going to spam the Pistons.
Hey, man.
And be like, you got to get Jordan and Chris the fucking
dude. 70 is all it takes, man. One is all it takes.
True.
You know, you never know.
But so a glimmer of hope is Ish is coming back. He's been hurt for the last month or so, and it's been absolutely awful without him. You know, we all know how important Ish is to the team.
Right.
I don't think we all truly understood until this stretch.
Dude, I understood that last year.
Right.
Like last season, he was balling out. It was like he was like the spark plug. Exactly. When like we were just feeling like we're gonna lose or just hopeless, he'll come in there, score like 15 points off like nothing.
He just changes the pace of the game. He moves the ball, and my issue with Jose is he'll just dribble to the elbow, sort of let the defense collapse, dribble out, pass it.
It's too predictable.
It is, and I was saying like so. I used to be a huge Jose fan. Like I wanted him in his prime in Detroit. We got him for a half a season after the trade deadline one year, and then he left. Whatever. Even last year in Cleveland, he was solid. He just sucks now. I mean, something happened, you know, age, obviously. But, like, I don't know. He doesn't have the same court vision and instincts and shooting ability that he had. Granted, I don't expect him to be that same player, but he has been so much worse than advertised.
I feel like that happens with a lot of players. I feel like kind of look at Carmelo Anthony or look at Isaiah Thomas or anybody. Like, when you're like so used to your unit and your team and like all this, the style you play with that team, and then you switch to a whole new team and a whole new like feel for it, a whole new fan base. Even I feel like it kind of gets to you a little bit, and you just kind of maybe it just takes time to adjust, or maybe you just I don't know. You kind of like, but on the flip side, I feel like if you're on a team that kind of sucks, and then you go to another team and you're like, oh, this is my chance to revamp myself or revamp my career. Then that's like another like the flip side,
right?
So maybe I don't know. Maybe that's could be what it is. I just look at those examples of like
just
Mellow and right.
I mean,
just kind of fall off.
It's an age thing too. I mean, he's you know this. He hasn't said anything, but this could easily be his last season.
Oh yeah,
Jose. So let's jump into some big fish trade ideas.
Okay.
Because I think we can all agree that this team needs a little shakeup. Now,
we need a big
shakeup. There's limited flexibility. Again, you know, nobody wants our garbage. We don't have cap room at all. So one of a few things need to happen. Either, in my opinion, I think smaller trades are the way to go right now, unless you can I'll get into the big trade ideas. But I think that a smaller trade could be better to at least shake something up, get another shooter in the game, just some sort of change.
Right.
And I'm not saying get rid of a first-round pick for a role player.
Oh, no.
Because
that'd be just stupid.
Right? I appreciate Ed Stefanski, who's the acting GM, or he's just the GM. He's not called the GM, but he's the senior advisor, but he's the GM.
Basically, yeah.
And he said, which I agree with, and I'm glad, is that they're not going to get rid of any assets unless it's something that moves the needle and puts them into competing for a top spot in the East.
Okay.
So I am comfortable that they won't get rid of an asset like a Kennard or a first round pick for a role player. But I think someone can figure something out. Smarter people than me can figure out a smaller trade without getting rid of a pick or Luke Kennard or something. But big trades. There's 3 stars, in my opinion, that I've seen are sort of maybe on the market or I think can be had by the trade deadline next month. Bradley Beal, Kemba Walker, Kevin Love. I'm going to start with Kevin Love because no.
Okay, yeah.
I saw there was a report the other day that Kevin Love could be shopped around. And, I think Vince Ellis, Pistons beat writer, said that this is a move he could see the Pistons making or trying to make. No, I totally disagree. I mean, I don't think Vince was saying that this trade specifically. But that would be a terrible idea because I saw a bunch of other people being like, oh, yeah, we can go after Kevin Love. Why would you do that?
We don't need a Kevin Love.
For a just as expensive Andre Drummond, who's a less talented and more frequently injured, knock on wood, Blake Griffin. Mm-hmm. We don't need that. We don't want that. No. That's stupid. I would rather have Andre Drummond than Kevin Love, having Blake Griffin on the team.
Right.
Before we got Blake, I would be all in on this idea because we get a stretch 4, Kevin Love, whatever.
Right.
But that's a no from me. I don't know. I'm not a Kevin Love guy.
I agree. I don't like you were saying earlier. We need point guards and shooting guards.
The biggest issues on this team. There's 3 huge issues here. I think the bench is a problem without Ish mainly. I think once he's back, it could get stabilized. We could be fine. That's a wait and see thing. But urgently in the starting lineup, we need to figure out the point guard situation. We need a point guard who can move the basketball, doesn't need it in their hands, and just gets people involved, right? Mm-hmm. And then I think you could feel more comfortable not running everything through a Blake Griffin post-up, which I think would help the offense diversify, and it'd be great. Second of all, you need a wing who can shoot. Granted, I love Reggie Bullock. He's going to be a free agent this year. It's going to be interesting to see if we can afford to keep him. He is by far our best wing player. He's a shooting guard. Right. Now, we run into the issue at small forward. Granted, Bruce Brown has been starting lately and running the wing with Reggie, I'm not mad at that lineup, but we need another scorer, someone who can create their own shot. Reggie can't create his own shot. Reggie Bullock, he's a great shooter, and he's been a little better off the dribble this year. He's a great cutter, but he can't create his own shot. That's where we need a Bradley Beal sort of player.
Yeah,
who can slide incredible. He's a solid defender. He's a great scorer. And he's only making, I think it's $27 million a year, which is a lot, but it's as far as star contracts go, that's completely doable considering John Wall's about to make $40 million next year.
Jeez, dude.
So
and isn't he hurt? And isn't he out for a few weeks?
Yeah, he's out for the year.
Oh wow, yeah.
So that's why I think the Wizards might sort of embrace tanking and would be more inclined to ship off Bradley Beal. So Rod Beard was saying that he heard the asking price for Beal was 2 first-round picks, an asset, and another player.
Jeez,
that's a lot.
That's so
Here's
much.
The thing. Here's why I say yes. And I ran a poll on this the other day. I'll pull it up in a second.
Oh, I think I voted on that too.
What did you say? Yes or no?
I think I said yes.
I mean,
I have
it right here. So
hold on.
400 votes. 56% said hell no. 44% said hell yeah. So I suggested Kennard, Stanley, and 2 first-round picks for Beal.
Oh,
I think that's a lot, right?
Yeah,
that's a lot. But I think, and obviously we're not talking to the Wizards front office, but I'm okay getting rid of 2 first-round picks, a Stanley Johnson, and whoever else they think is valuable other than Kennard. I would give them Bullock, because like I said, I don't think that we'll necessarily be able to keep him, and I think he just takes the place of the starting shooting guard. I would do it.
I agree. I say we go all in because that's such a good. That's a reasonably. I think that's a reasonable trade.
And protect the first round picks, so make this year's lottery protected or top 10 or something like that. But I know this upcoming draft is supposed to be very good, but you need, like I said, and when we were talking earlier, you gotta figure out how to maximize Blake Griffin. You gotta get him another player who can help him because he's on an island by himself right now with no help.
And literally everyone's taking note. So he's gonna be triple teamed every game,
right.
and if
every
like
possession he's
earlier,
getting dogged in the post. Yeah.
Right. So it's like, I don't know.
So
man.
I would say yes. Granted, I don't know if the Wizards do that. I don't know if the Pistons do that. But in salaries, you got to figure out the salaries as well. Actually, the trade I mentioned won't work at all salary-wise. You might have to throw in Reggie Jackson, something like that. So a lot of the bad contracts the Pistons gave out are over after next year. So that's why I feel like maybe they can leverage something with someone, because it's at this point in the season is halfway left, and these bad contracts are almost expiring contracts. Like this summer they'll be expiring contracts because it's for next summer that they expire.
Right.
So, maybe the Pistons can finagle a way to get rid of Reggie Jackson to Washington because John Wall's out for the season. They need some sort of starting point guard. I don't know. Probably doesn't work.
I don't know.
Trade machine needs to work its magic. The Pistons, by the way, have someone in their front office, the dude who made the trade machine. So that's pretty hype.
Oh. So he would definitely.
So you can imagine that they're figuring out all the possibilities. They're like,
dude, we got to crunch these numbers, bro. Like, we need to figure out something.
So that's one option, and I don't know if it's realistic or doable or plausible, but if there's a way to get Bradley Beal without getting rid of a Kennard, or that's it, do it. Also, don't fucking touch Bruce Brown.
No,
Bruce Brown is on the Pistons for the rest of his career.
I doubt they would.
So then we move to another trade idea of Kemba. So nothing says the Hornets are shopping Kemba, but I believe he's in a similar boat where his contract is up at the end of next year. And if Charlotte is staying the mediocre team that it's been forever, you can't expect Kemba to want to stay. Maybe the Hornets panic a little bit if they get flooded with an offer. I would give him the same deal. Give him 2 first-round picks. Give him Stanley. Give him Reggie. Issue with Kemba is they would definitely try to attach Nick Batum, who's making $24 million over the next 2.5 years.
We just can't do that.
Well, the only way we could sort of maybe leverage that, giving them Lure and Galloway to match salaries, and those are up next year instead of in 2 years. But I don't know. For Kemba, you think about it. I don't know that you do it, but imagine a Kemba, Dre, and Blake. Call him Drake.
Yeah, dude, I'm thinking
pick and rolls. And it'd be crazy. That's the type of move that I think would put the Pistons in a competing spot with the Raptors and the Bucks and the Sixers.
I remember we talked about that, I think, last season, too. Or maybe it was 2 years ago.
I've wanted him every year.
Yeah.
Since we haven't made the playoffs.
Like, yeah, I just don't know how realistic that would be. But, I mean, I'm all for it. I just want a new roster. I minus, like, of course, Dre, Blake,
it's
so on
tough.
and so forth. But
hands are tied. Thank you, Stan.
Right. I mean, it's like he kind of literally was like, oh, well, yeah, you guys are fucked, but I'm dipping out.
So let's talk a few still a little big but a little more realistic trade ideas that I think are only realistic because I think the other team could agree to it. I don't necessarily think that these are phenomenal moves for the Pistons, but it all depends on what you give up. The issue that the issue the Pistons are dealing with now is no team is just going to help. No team's going to see we're struggling and be like, I'm not going to use that as leverage. Here's equal value for your players. No. I mean, you gotta give more to get when a team sees you're struggling. You have no leverage. So I've seen a trade floating around that I just want to start by saying I totally disagree with, but I wouldn't be surprised if Dallas said okay. Dre and Reggie for DeAndre Jordan and Dennis Smith Jr. There's been reports that the Mavs are shopping Dennis Smith. And, DeAndre, I don't know that he's had the effect they thought he was going to have when he signed the big contract. So you could imagine that they're willing to part ways with them. Dre is a big upgrade over DeAndre, in my opinion. And I wouldn't be mad at a Dennis Smith for Reggie trade, but I also wouldn't be super pumped about it. So,
I mean...
Yeah. But the pair of that trade, I hate.
Yeah, I don't want either of them.
But it's change.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not like the Dennis Smith. Yeah, Dennis Smith, sure. But again, DeAndre Jordan, we don't need him.
He's already tried with Blake, and now he's older and less athletic.
Right. It's another
Granted,
Clippers
he's
situation.
still athletic, but not. Yeah.
But like, fine, okay. But still, like 2 years, what is that gonna give us? You know what I mean? So, I don't know. If we could work it with Dennis Smith and maybe someone else, but not. I don't think that those two in particular. Dude, that would be crazy. They would never.
He's gonna be a Mav for life.
Right,
like
they would
Dirk.
never do that.
Yeah. So another trade that I actually proposed on Twitter the other day is for Enes Kanter. Granted, I don't know that the Knicks say yes to this, and I don't know that they really have much reason to. But if the Pistons can entice them enough, maybe they do, and I think it helps. So I'm thinking Enes Kanter's on an $18 million expiring contract. So also he's a very solid backup big, which we're lacking. Zaza and John Lure, granted, they're both playing solid. Like Zaza's been solid this season for the most part. Mm-hmm. John has been playing better recently, but Enes is a step up of both. And I think he can really help bolster the bench unit. Also, it's an expiring contract. So the only thing is the Knicks would have to take back John Lure and Galloway and whatever, and they already got rid of Galloway once. And they'd be tied up in money for another year, so I doubt it. Maybe a second-round pick or two can sort of entice them. I don't know, but I'm a fan of Enes.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, I couldn't see why it would be bad. You know what I mean? I can't see why I would be like, that just doesn't work, or like, why would we?
We would have to attach some sort of asset, though. Otherwise, the Knicks hang up immediately, and I don't know how worth it that becomes, but it's a thought. So a couple, in my opinion, actual realistic targets here that I would want the Pistons to go after. Maybe a DJ Augustine, Evan Fournier combo. Granted, I know that they don't vault you up, but I think DJ would fit much better in this system than Reggie. And Evan is a wing who can score. Granted, he's not a Bradley Beal, but I think he's a solid player. And if you can... So I wouldn't give up a first-round pick. I would give up as many seconds as they want, and Reggie Jackson and Stanley Johnson, and maybe we're talking here. Maybe this is realistic. Mm-hmm. Granted, Reggie's a better player than DJ Augustine, but it's about fit, and it's about... the system you're in,
right? And
Reggie's not working in this system right now. Mm-hmm. That's the thought.
I mean, I don't see any fault with it, really. I like Evan Fournier. I think he's a pretty cool shooter, man.
I had him on my fantasy team, and then
that didn't pan out so well.
He's just been fine putting up fantasy numbers, but I mean, he's given you 13, 14 points a game. And he can score. He's a threat to score. I mean, he hit the buzzer beater against us a couple weeks ago. Or maybe that was last week. I don't know. All these Pistons losses are running together.
Yeah.
All right, 3 more options for me.
Cool.
And I don't have actual trade proposals, but these are players who I think we can see if they're available and see what we can do.
Kind of knock on the door, be like, hey, you home?
Right, exactly.
If they're like, nah, bro.
Etuan Moore from the Pelicans. Granted, this all depends on what the Pelicans are trying to do, right? And it depends what we can give them back.
Right.
Pelicans are in win now mode because they got to coax Anthony Davis to want to stay past, I believe, next season when he becomes a free agent. Mm-hmm. So, granted, Etuan Moore, I think, is a great scorer. He's a good shooter, and he's just a solid wing player who can help our starting lineup. What do the Pelicans want? I don't know. I'm not inside of Dell Demps' head. He's the owner or GM. I don't really know. But what do they want? Who knows? I want Etuan Moore. Trey Burke, Chris Dunn.
Dude, Trey Burke would be dope.
So Trey Burke, throughout his career, hasn't been great. Up until this year with the Knicks, he's sort of had a resurgence to what he used to be when he was at U of M. Mm-hmm. Bringing back with Glenn Robinson,
dude,
who sucks.
U of M boys.
But, okay, so actually I want to talk about Glenn for a second and how disappointing he has been. I was very excited. It was a very low risk, I thought, very smart move by the Pistons to sign him. Mm-hmm. But he has not shown any sign of being a good basketball player since he's been here. Now, I know he was great at U of M. He was solid in Indiana his first year or two. But just...
It kind of goes back to what I was saying. I feel like it's such a weird flip for a lot of people. Like, they'll be, like, okay or even great at one team. Right. And then they go to another team, and they're just like... It's just like a switch, dude. It's like...
Yeah.
they're ass.
Well, last player that I want to mention is Chris Dunn on the Bulls, point guard, who I think is very solid.
Every time I hear Chris Dunn, all I can remember is that fucking video where he like smashed his teeth in.
God, yeah.
That's
bad.
That
reminds me of when
terrible,
Joe
dude.
Johnson did it when he was on
Oh
Phoenix.
my god,
It's just it's nasty.
It was terrible, dude.
But
That
he's
made
recovered.
me what?
He's recovered though.
Oh well,
So-
yeah, that's good. That's good. that was cringe.
So there was a report earlier in the year about the Bulls maybe shopping him, not knowing his fit with the team. I mean, they just shut down Jabari for no reason, which is very interesting. So I wouldn't want him though. He's making too much money. He's not, in my opinion, a great player. I digress. Those are my trade options. I don't know what's going to happen. All I know is the Pistons need to do something. So let's end the segment or the podcast with, talking about the bright spots right now.
Let's talk about them bright spots.
There's two, in my opinion. Maybe three. Blah, blah. So Kyrie Thomas has not got much time this year, but I think he can be a very solid player maybe later this year, maybe next year, maybe in 2 years. But I like that Dwayne at least gives players a little shot.
Yeah, I like that too.
And that relates to Bruce Brown and Luke Kennard. Luke is a really weird case. I think, granted, all of us would have rather had Donovan Mitchell. But
of course.
I really think Luke can be a J.J. Redick, but who can actually create his own shot better than J.J. could. And I think that could happen soon if he's given the opportunity, but also so he needs to be more aggressive because he's been so hesitant all season, which has got him in Casey's doghouse, which is just a never-ending cycle of he needs to play more, he needs to shoot more, he needs to be better. But I think Luke Kennard is the future of the shooting guard for the Detroit Pistons.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that. I mean, again, I think it's just one of those weird, everything's so new that you might be a little hesitant to, I don't know, maybe, like, because I remember last season, I was like, I think Luke is dope. You know what I mean? I was like, this dude is going to pull up and hit a shot. I'm like, okay, cool. Like,
he was
I
in
was
the
cool with
doghouse
that.
with Stan all the time, too.
But I wonder if it's more so he didn't give a fuck because, like, I feel like most of the team didn't give a fuck about what Stan thought because...
Right. But at the same time, for younger players, and this was an issue for Stanley, I think, is every time you make a mistake, you have to look over your shoulder and be like, oh, he's about to pull me from the game and I'm not going to play for a week.
Right, you walk on eggshells a little
bit.
Yeah.
Which is definitely, I think, an issue. But and Dwayne is historically a very good player development coach and giving players a shot that are young.
Right.
But for some reason, it hasn't completely manifested with Luke. We'll see how it plays out. But he's been better lately. The last 5 games or so, he's been better. But I'm going to end the show talking about Bruce Brown, who I fucking love.
Dude, I think he is dope. And I'm going to throw out an opinion. People who are listening.
That's not allowed here.
Right. Dude, honestly, fuck media. You can't have any opinions now. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
I'm kidding. That was a joke.
I digress.
People may agree. They may disagree. But I feel like Bruce Brown, the way he plays and the style of which he just attacks just kind of reminds me of Kyrie Irving a little bit. I don't know. What's your thought? Because, like, I was watching a little bit of highlights and just the way he, like, I mean, granted, it's not exactly Kyrie. It's not even, it's not even close, but it's still, like, reminiscent of it. Game. Yeah, it kind of reminds me a little bit like how Kyrie would attack.
So he, to me, reminds me a lot of prime Avery Bradley, who's a really good defensive player, except Bruce Brown has more length and is more athletic, which is helpful.
Right.
And, it took Avery a little bit to develop his offensive game, and then he came to Detroit and it disappeared.
Dude, that's another thing. We were so hyped about that.
Dude, I know.
And then it just, like, it
I
was
don't
like,
blame
what
Stan
happened?
for that at all. I mean, granted, I miss Marcus Morris, but we were all hype about it. It seemed like a great idea at the time until we realized Avery wasn't good. But Bruce Brown reminds me of what Avery was in Boston. And Bruce has been a lot better with his shot since the first 10, 20 games of the season. He's been aggressive offensively. He's making good passes. His energy and intensity is always there. If Stanley could play offense, which would be really cool if he developed that right now.
Dude, it would be cool for the last, 4 years?
Such a great wing combo. I mean, imagine if Stanley lived up to what he could have been offensively. and then you bring Bruce along next to him, and no team is ever going to score. But moral of the story is I love Bruce Brown, and I'm really excited to see where he ends up at the end of the season.
Right, same.
So that's all we got.
Man, that was a quick 40 minutes.
I know. I hope y'all enjoy this nonsense. We'll be back soon. We're going to do this more. We'll be back on the grind. But
now that we're in sunny California.
Hopefully, next time we have this conversation, it's really hype, and we're really excited because the Pistons have either done something or they just started clicking.
Or if you guys sponsored us and we went to a couple games, we can get some live tweets going.
We accept PayPal or Venmo
or Patreon.
Or just tickets. It doesn't matter.
Or just, free
just
anything.
Wire transfer us some money. But all right, this has been another edition of Pistons Thoughts. We'll be back. Thanks for listening, and hopefully the Pistons stop sucking.
All right, bye, y'all.
I'm out.